Is flipping property a good strategy for 2025? In this video, I'm going to share with you what is flipping property, should you be doing it, and the step-by-step process you should follow. And also, I'm going to give someone the opportunity to win a full day of face-to-face live training all about how to find massively discounted properties, which is the first step you need to know if you want to successfully flip property. So my name's Simon Zutshi. I've been investing in property for over 30 years now. I've flipped lots of properties, but I've also kept lots of properties. And I'm going to share with you when should you flip and when should you hold on to properties. I'm also going to talk about the two main types of different property flipping. Most people think about buying a property where you do it up and sell it on at a profit. And that's normally quite a quick transaction, anywhere from 3 to maybe 6 months. But I'm also going to talk about a slightly longer type of flipping where you might hold the property for a few years, but actually you also do it completely tax-free. So I'll come back to that in a moment. Let's talk about the traditional type of flipping first of all. So step number one, if you want to flip property, you need to learn how to find property below market value, normally buying from a motivated seller. Now, either you can go direct to vendor or you can look online, and actually working with estate agents is a really good way to find motivated sellers, particularly in this buyer's market where there are more people looking to sell than there are looking to buy. Estate agents need to work with us serious buyers, and they like us more than homeowners because homeowners only buy one property, whereas investors and flippers, we're potentially going to buy lots of properties from that one estate agent. So when you have a great relationship with an estate agent, you could find lots and lots of deals. Step number two to flipping property is you need to work out who are you going to flip this property onto. Is this going to be a property you're going to sell to another investor? In which case it's got to be in an area of strong rental demand, it's got to stack up really well as an investment, or if it doesn't stack up so well, maybe you could sell it to a first-time buyer or someone who's looking to move into the next property. And the way to check the demand is speak to local estate agents to understand, is there demand for this particular type of property? You see, it's no good you buying a really cheap property and doing it up if no one wants that property once it's finished. Step number three is we need to understand what work are we going to do to that property. Normally, we might find something like a deceased estate. So someone's lived there 30 years, they've died, they pass it on to the family don't really want it, they don't have the knowledge or time or energy to do it up themselves, they just want to sell it as fast as they can. So we can buy that at a discount, we might go in, we're going to place the avocado bathroom suite, we're going to put a new kitchen in, we're going to pull up the swirly carpets, we're going to replaster, maybe rewire the building, maybe put a new central heating system in, and take what was a very tired old property, make it into a nice modern desirable property, and hopefully sell it at a big profit. Now, if you're doing that kind of work, you need to very carefully understand what's it going to cost you. And this is one of the big mistakes that people make when doing flips. They get the numbers wrong. So I want to give you a couple of rules around this to help you understand what the numbers should look like when doing property flips. First of all, we need to make sure we're going to make enough profit. We should aim for a 20% profit margin. So let me give you some examples. Let's say the end GDV, the gross development value, having done a refurb, is going to be £500,000. If we plan to make a 20% gross profit, that would be £100,000 based on a full value of £500,000. And that then tells us how much we can afford to spend. So in other words, in this case, we'd be able to spend £400,000 in actually buying the property, in all the acquisition costs, our stamp duty, our closing costs, our legal fees, our finance costs, and also all our development costs as well. So if it's going to cost more than 400 in this case, we wouldn't be making our 20% profit, and then it's maybe not a good enough deal. Now you might say, I don't know if I can make 20% in my area. You just need to get better at finding better deals, or you need to get better at controlling your costs, because 20% is what you need to make sure you make the required profit. Let me explain why. Sometimes people overestimate the GDV and they're not going to make as much as they think, or they get the cost wrong and it costs more, it takes longer, financing costs more, so that profit is squeezed. If you don't have a 20% profit margin, there's a risk that you might not make any money, you might even lose money. So if you can't make 20% on a flip, personally, I don't think it's worth you doing. Now let me give you a couple of more tips about the work you're going to do on the property. I know it might sound obvious, but it's really important to make sure that the money you spend on the refurb is less than the value you add, okay? And let me give you an example of that. Sometimes people, they buy a property and they get carried away. They put a really expensive, amazing looking kitchen into a property, which looks great, but the money they've spent, they're never going to get back because it's not going to add as much value as the cost of doing it. For example, if you had a £100,000 property, if you spent £20,000 on the kitchen, you're never going to increase the value by £20,000. You're not going to get your money back. Likewise, if you were doing a £500,000 property, if you're too cheap and do a £3,000 to £5,000 kitchen when it should be more like a £15,000 to £20,000 kitchen, you're not going to sell it because anyone spending that kind of money wants the property to look appropriate for the value they're buying at. So it's really important you're careful with your spending on the project, and that's where people make a mistake. They often overspend on the project. Now, so far, we've talked about flipping property where you buy something, you renovate and add value. There is another type of flipping where actually you don't have to do any work to the property at all. The key here is to buy massively below market value, and instead of you doing the work, you then flip it straight into a property auction. Now, why would you do that? Well, think about it. People go to auctions looking for great deals. And you have a lot of people who spot this great deal. They often compete in the auction and they bid against each other. And sometimes you get people paying over the odds, paying more than they should pay. It's part of greed and fear and the emotions that happen in auctions. So some of my students, that's exactly what they're doing. Particularly one of them, Paul, who used to be an estate agent, then he became a deal sourcer. And Paul has flipped over 800 properties. And the vast majority of them have been done in exactly this way. He buys a property massively below market value, very often through estate agents, and he's flipping it within a month or two into an auction, typically making on average 20% every time he does that. Now, Paul is actually running a full day of training for us. It's a £500 course, comes with lunch and refreshments and a full money back guarantee up to halfway through. However, someone watching this video can actually win a place on that face-to-face course. So listen very carefully. I'll tell you at the end exactly how you could be chosen as the lucky winner. So flipping property in auction can also be another way of doing it. But what I'd also like to talk to you about is actually holding property for a slightly longer period of time. Now, most people, when they're thinking about flipping property, it's something they buy, they flip on, they never live there. But actually, there's a reason why maybe you should live in some of the properties you plan to flip, for the simple reason that if it's your main residence, when you flip a property, you pay no tax on it at all. If you have a property that isn't your main residence and you're flipping it, if it's in your own name, you're going to pay capital gains tax on the tax between what you bought it for and spent on it and what you sell it for. Or if it's in a company, you're going to pay corporation tax. So by doing it in your own name and actually living in the property, it's a way of moving up the property ladder. Let me explain. So you buy your first property, you renovate it, you add value, and obviously you've increased it, you're going to sell it for a higher price. So all the profit you take out, you use it as deposit for the next property. So you might sell a fully renovated property at, say, 200,000. You then buy a property that's completely knackered at 200,000. You spend your money on it, maybe make it worth 300, 350. You sell it for 350. You then buy a knackered property at 300, 350. And so you can move up the property ladder. And at the end of it, you have a nice big valuable property, which most people would never be able to afford themselves. You've just reinvested all the profit without having to pay tax and nicely moved up the property ladder. That's one of the things that I have done as I've progressed through my property journey. However, I must admit, very often when I've bought a property to live in myself, I've often added value to it. But also I bought it with the intention of when I no longer want to live here and I move out, I want to be able to rent it to someone else. So some of my properties I've flipped, but often I've held on to them. And if I'm perfectly honest, one of my big challenges with flipping property is that although you can make a good chunk of cash when you flip a property, and if it's your own home, it's tax-free. If it's not your own home, you're going to pay some tax on it. But despite making that lump of cash, the problem is when you sell that property, you crystallize the profit. You're never going to make any more profit from that property because you've sold it. Whereas if you hold it long term, you can get the rental income and the long-term capital growth. And as the value goes up over time, you can refinance it, take the money out to give you a lump of cash, which by the way is tax-free because it's debt. You then take that and go and buy another property. So I think flipping property in the right market can be a really good strategy. And I believe we're going to see the property market start to rise in 2025. Flipping property is not something you want to do in a falling or a static market. You really want to do it in a rising market because then you get some of the extra capital growth because that's the way the market's going. So although I think it is a good strategy, be aware you don't want to flip and sell everything because otherwise you're going to have to keep on doing it in order to make money. So a great strategy is when you find a property from a motivated seller, work out, is this a property that I think I should flip and sell on? And you could take the profit to use for deposits to ones you want to keep. Or is this a property that I should add value to, refinance and keep? It's an important decision and it's something I think you should think about in order to get a balanced portfolio. So if you want to be the lucky person to win a full day of face-to-face training to show you how you can buy properties massively below market value and flip them in auction very, very quickly to make some really good cash profit, all you have to do is kind of comment below, what was your biggest learning from this training video? Don't just give me one word, give me a couple of sentences. What was your biggest learning? And my team will look through all of those and you might be the lucky person they pick. And we'll comment below who the lucky person is as well. You're going to win this £500 training, which is going to help you make a huge amount of money in 2025. And by the way, even if you don't have any of your own money, if you find a really good deal and bring it back to Paul based on what he's going to teach you on this one day, he'll actually fund the deal for you and I'll split the profit. You can't get much better than that. So make sure you come and comment below in a sentence or two, what's your biggest learning from this particular training video? So in conclusion, I think 2025 could be a great time for you to be flipping property, but make sure you don't sell all of them. Make sure you hold on to some of them to get the ongoing rental income and also the long-term capital growth. As ever, I encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill. Make sure you leave that couple of sentences comment and also click on the link below to come and join the live training with me and Paul. See you very soon.